Kinderlech, gather around as we sit together for Malava Malka, escorting the Heilige Shabbos Queen on her way. This is a special time of bruchas, yeshias, and it's a Segulah to tell a story of the Baal Shem Tov on Motzei Shabbos, especially a Geldmasse, a money story. The Baal Shem Tov stories aren't just words. They bring yeshias, refias, and nisim. Tonight I want to share with you a story known as the hidden journey, how the Baal Shem Tov received the Shem for Kvitis Aderech. This story, originally written in Yiddish by the Heilige tzaddik Rebbe Chaim Miyampele, who was a grandchild of the Baal Shem through his mother's side and his father's side, shows us how even the smallest steps are guided by Hashem's hand. So come close, listen carefully, and may the bruchas of this story bring you light and goodness into our lives. In Mezuzah, the Baal Shem Tov had a custom. Every Thursday afternoon, he would sit in the shul, and the poor Yidden of the town would come to him. These were people who didn't have enough for Shabbos. And the Baal Shem Tov made sure each one had what they needed. Some received 1 gulden, other 2, and 1 Yid received a full ruble each week. One Thursday, the Baal Shem Tov began distributing money, as usual, but when the Yid came forward, the Baal Shem Tov gave him nothing. The Yid was confused. Maybe the Rebbe didn't see me, he thought, or maybe he doesn't have enough money this week. Surely by tonight he'll remember and give me something. But the evening passed, and the Baal Shem Tov still didn't give him anything. The Yid went home, embarrassed and unsure what to do. When he arrived, his wife asked, "No, what happened?" The Yid sighed and said, "The Baal Shem Tov didn't give me anything this week. He said next week he'll give me enough for this week too." His wife, faithful Aishas Chayil, borrowed money to buy flour and meat so they could have Shabbos. She thought, next week the Rebbe will provide and we will repay everything. But the same thing happened the next week and the week after that. Each week the Yid's wife had to borrow more, pawning what little they had, their candlesticks, their jewelry, everything they had in their home. They were left with nothing. Finally, the Yid went to the Baal Shem Tov's house, poured out his heart. "Rebbe, why for weeks you've given to everyone, but not to me? What did I do wrong?" The Baal Shem Tov looked at him kindly and said, "Why are you relying on me? Do you think I'm the one who provides for you? Hashem provides for everyone. Go out and do business. Go, wheel and deal, and you'll see Hashem's help." The Yid was stunned. "Rebbe, I don't know how to do business. I've never bought or sold anything in my life. And even if I wanted to, I have nothing to start with." Baal Shem Tov handed him a single ruble and said, "Here, take this and go. Hashem will help you." The Yid left the Baal Shem Tov's house with the ruble in his hand, uncertain what to do. As he walked through the streets, he wondered, what can I possibly do with just 1 ruble? Suddenly a man approached him carrying freshly shorn wool. "Do you want to buy this wool?" the man asked. "How much?" the Yid replied. 2 rubles, the man answered. The Yid shook his head. "I only have 1 ruble, he said. "If you are willing, I'll give you that, but it's all I have." The man thought for a moment and agreed. The Yid bought the wool, and as he stood there, another man approached him and noticed it. "That's fine wool," the second man said. "How much are you willing to sell it for?" 4 rubles, the Yid replied instinctively. The man immediately agreed and paid him 4 rubles. In just a moment, the Yid had just quadrupled his money. From there, the Yid continued buying and selling with siyata d'shmaya. Each deal was successful, and his wealth grew quickly. Before long, he had earned 100 rubles. He returned home, and he handed the money to his wife. "Here," he said, "repay all our debt and retrieve everything we pawned." His wife was overjoyed, and the Yid's success did not stop there. His business flourished, and soon he became one of the wealthiest and most trusted men of Mezuzah. One day, the Puritz, the nobleman of Mezhbich, sent for the Yid. The Puritz owned 999 fields and refused to buy 1,000, believing it would somehow threaten his position. At the grand gathering of noblemen, the Puritz presented a dazzling diamond, as large as the egg of a duck, and it was brilliant. A duck, a kachka, yes. "My friends," the Puritz said, "I wish to sell this gem, but it must be taken across the oceans to find the right buyer. This task requires someone who is trustworthy and capable of handling such a great responsibility. I trust only one man, the Yid of Mezhbich." The Puritz sent his finest horse and carriage, called the Yid to his estate. When the Yid arrived, the Puritz explained the task, showed him the diamond. "This is a great responsibility," the Puritz said. "I need someone who will fulfill it perfectly." The Yid replied, "I will Be'ezus Hashem do this for you, but I need 14 days to settle my affairs and make sure my business is in order before I leave." The Puritz agreed, and the Yid returned home. But as time passed, the Yid became so absorbed in his work that he forgot entirely about the task. On the 14th day, in the afternoon, the Puritz sent his carriage again, drawn by his finest horses, to remind the Yid. The servant arrived and knocked on his door. "No, are you ready?" they asked. The Yid froze, realizing he had forgotten his promise. But he was a man of integrity, and his word was holy. Without hesitation, he packed quickly, just his clothing and food, and left immediately. He didn't even say goodbye to his wife, children, or the Baal Shem Tov. The Puritz entrusted the Yid with a box containing gold and the precious diamond. With everything prepared, the Yid departed. At first, the journey was smooth. The Yid joined a ship headed across the ocean towards their destination, and the passengers were content. But then a fierce storm arose. The waves towered over the ship, crashing down with tremendous force. The ship was tossed violently until it finally broke apart. All the passengers drowned in the raging sea. But Hashem Yisburach had other plans for the Yid. He clung to a piece of wood and with Hashem's help floated through the stormy waters until he reached an island. Exhausted but alive, he dragged himself ashore. The Yid, stranded in the island, wandered for days with no sign of life. His food came from the fish that the ocean tossed ashore, and his water from small puddles left by the rain. "Ribono shel olam," he thought. "What is this place?" One early Friday morning, as he walked along the island, he spotted a walled city in the distance. His heart leapt with hope. With all the strength he had left, he hurried toward it. When he reached the city gates, he noticed something remarkable. A mezuzah on the doorpost of the first house he passed. Baruch Hashem, he thought. He entered the house but found no one. He walked through the rooms one by one until he reached the kitchen. There he saw food cooking on the stove and fresh challahs on the table. Starving, he thought, it should be what it should be. My neshama needs strength. He washed his hands, made brachas, sat down and ate. Afterward, he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. When the Yid awoke, it was time to go to shul. He left the house and he wandered the streets, and he sees one house after the other house, the same thing, until he found a beautiful building. Inside was a shul filled with Yidden, sitting silently with their heads resting on the stenders. They didn't move, speak. The Yid began to daven mincha, followed by Motzei Shabbos and Marav. After Ulayni l'Shabayach, something strange happened. The people in shul lifted their heads, stood up, and said, "Good Shabbos." Then they left the shul and returned to their homes. As the Yid left the shul, he was approached by the balabais of the first house he had entered. "Come," the balabais said, "be my guest for Shabbos meal." The Yid followed him back to his house. They ate in silence without speaking a word. After the meal, the Baal Bayis left and the Yid went to sleep. The same thing happened Shabbos morning. The Yid returned to shul, saw the people davening with their heads down, and davened alone. When he finished, they all lifted their heads, with Ge Shabbos, and went home. The Baal Bayis invited him again for the daytime meal. At the meal, they ate in silence. When the meal was over, Baal Bayis left, and the Yid went to sleep. At mincha time, the Yid went back to shul, davened, and returned with the Baal Bayis, chassidus. After chassidus, they davened Maariv, and then all the people disappeared. The week of silence. The Yid remained in the city, thinking it would be like Shabbos every day. But on Sunday, when he went to shul, it was empty. The same happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He was alone davening 3 times a day, with no one else present. When the next Shabbos arrived, the people returned. The Yid went through the same experience as before, mincha, Kabbalah Shabbos, and Maariv and shul, followed by a silent meal at the Baal Bayis' house. Shabbos morning and afternoon repeated the same pattern. Finally, at chassidus, after benching, the Yid could no longer hold back. He turned to the Baal Bayis and asked, "My dear Baal Bayis, I've been here for so long, and I don't understand what's happening. Who are you people? Are you alive or not alive?" The Baal Bayis looked at the Yid and began to explain, his voice carrying the weight of generations. In the days of the Beis HaMikdash, we were like all other Yidden. 3 times a year on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, we would go up to Yerushalayim, Kodesh, for the shlichus Segulah, as the Torah commands. But our city had a special way of doing it. The city was divided into 3 groups. Each Yom Tov, 1/3 of the city would go up to Yerushalayim to bring korbanos and celebrate before Hashem. Another third would walk them out of the city, escorting them with music and singing, making it a true celebration. The last third would go out of the city gates and wait for their return when those who went to Yerushalayim came back. They would be greeted with joyous music, dancing, and celebration. This was how it was always a cycle of joy and connection to the Beis HaMikdash. But then one year something changed. We went out of the city as usual with musical instruments, escorting our neighbors who were heading to Yerushalayim. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and happiness, as it always was. Then we waited outside the gates for their return. We waited and we waited. Days turned into weeks. We thought perhaps they were delayed, but the weeks became months, and the months became years. Finally, what it felt like an eternity, one man returned. He came back to us, but he wasn't the same. He was broken, trembling, with tears in his eyes. We surrounded him and asked, "What happened? Where is everyone else?" And then he told us the terrible news. He described the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. He told us about the burning of Yerushalayim, the bloodshed and the terrible suffering of the Eden. He cried so much as he described the horrors he has seen, just like in the Megillah Eichel. His voice shook as he spoke of the pain and the loss. We all cried with him, cried for the Beis HaMikdash, for our fellow Eden who never returned, and the terrible tzaddikim that had befallen upon us. We cried, and the grief was so overwhelming that eventually our neshumas left our bodies. When our neshumas ascended to the Bezdin Shel Mala, they saw how deeply we mourned for the Beis HaMikdash and the tragedies that had unfolded. In their mercy, they decreed that our bodies should remain intact until the coming of Mashiach. These people, they said, who cried so much for the Beis HaMikdash, should be connected to Shabbos even in their current state. From one Shabbos to the next, their neshumas will return to their bodies, and they will live for that holy day. Or so it is, the Baal Abayis concluded. Every Shabbos we return to daven, to eat, and to live like Eden. The food you ate in my house, prepared in the kitchen you saw, is from Gan Eden. But as soon as Shabbos ends, our neshumas leave again, and we wait for the next Shabbos to come. Hearing this, the Yid, overwhelmed by the holiness of their existence, asked, "That is good for you, but what about me? What am I supposed to do? I left a wife and children. How can I return home?" The Baal Abayis looked at him with understanding and said, "I will help you. I will write you a quittel with a special shem, a secret shem. It will take you wherever you need to go in an instant. In a half an hour, you will be home. But when you arrive at a city, you must take this quittel and throw it into the moving river that flows through your town." The Baal Abayis carefully gave him this kemaya, this parchment that the shem was written on. The Yid took it, knowing its immense power. With the quittel in his hand, the Yid felt an overwhelming sense of peace from the island. He was transported swiftly back to the outskirts of his city. As he approached the river near his town, ready to fulfill the Baal Abayis' instructions, where all of a sudden he felt a firm grip on his hand. Startled, he turned and saw none other than the Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh himself standing before him. "You fool," the Baal Shem Tov exclaimed. "Do you have any idea how much effort, how many tefillos I daven to bring you to this point? Everything, the wealth, the trust of the Purits, the storm, the island, the city, and the Shem were orchestrated so you can bring this holy quittel to me. This quittel holds the secret of Kvitzes Aderech, the power of instant travel. It was destined to come into my possession so I could use it for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. And now you were about to throw it into the water?" The Yid stood there, humbled and silent. He handed the quittel to the Baal Shem Tov, who smiled gently and said, "You have fulfilled your mission. Now go home to your family. I give you a bracha, arichas yomim, long life, and ashiris, wealth, for you and your descendants. Ad bias goyal tzedek till Mashiach comes. And don't worry about the purits or the diamonds. I have already taken care of everything." In the shlichus of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, who now held the Holy Shem, countless Yidden were helped. The Baal Shem Tov used the power of Kvitzes Aderech to annul harsh decrees, bad gesaides, save lives, and bring blessing to Klal Yisrael in times of needs. It is said in Chazal, whoever cries for the Beis HaMikdash will merit to see its joy. In this merit and this chus, may we all be zoiche to see the joy of Mashiach, both in our personal redemption and the ultimate geulah shalayma. Le'ele Nishmas, the heilige tzaddik who brought me this story, the Yampele Rebbe, Rabbeinu Eliezer Chaim ben Burech, Zeiche Tzaddik Levrucha, and of course, the tzaddik Arshivas Ayumim, Rabbeinu Yisroel ben Eliezer, the heilige Baal Shem Tov, Zeiche Tzaddik V'Kudesh Levrucha. In this chis, we should all be zoiche of Buna, Chaim, Zoyne, health, wealth, happiness.